Some time ago I played and reviewed the game Operation Northwind, published by Vivictis, and that game I was happy to see had mounted counters, because usually Vivictis games have very nice looking counters, but they're not mounted, so after I mount them, those counters don't look nearly as nice as they did before. So I was happy that Northwind had mounted counters, and I was hoping future games by Vivictis would, and well, there's at least one of the games that came out recently that has a nice set of mounted counters. I cannot say this is the only reason why I wanted to play the game, but I have to admit, this to me was a plus. The game comes with issue 100 of Vivictis magazine, so by the way, happy 100 issue Vivictis. The game is called The Frank Kings. This is an introductory game of medieval combat at the tactical level. Very straightforward, very simple introductory war game. It depicts 4 battles that were fought by Frank Kings against a variety of enemies. It is played on 3 maps, so 4 battles, 3 maps, nice variety there. The game does come with French rules, but the English rules are available online, so even if you do not speak the language of Molière, no reason to worry, you can still play the game. Counters for this game look extremely nice, as you can see already from the sample I'm showing you here. Units have a number printed there, which represents both the combat factor and the morale of the unit. They have a movement factor. Some units also have range attack, and that number there is the range in excess up to which they can fire. Then you have leaders that also have a movement factor and a combat factor that they can add to the combat factor of the unit that they are stacked with. The turn sequence in this game is extremely linear. First, player 1 moves and attacks, then player 2 does the same, movement first and then combat, and then you check to see if one or two players met the victory conditions. If that is the case, the game is over, otherwise you continue the game with next turn, and you continue this way until potentially the end of turn 7. Units can move up to their movement factor, which may be modified by terrain. Not in this case, this is all clear terrain. 1, 2, 1, 2. That unit there has 2, so we also move that unit by 2, 1, 2. Units exert a zone of control in the 6 axes around them. A unit that enters an enemy zone of control must end movement immediately, and next turn it cannot move from an enemy zone of control to another one. It must move into a non-enemy zone of control hex first. Combat is always optional, and it is between any number of attacking units and one and only one defending unit. The attacker adds together the combat factors of all the units that are adjacent to the target and attacking that target, and also the attacker can add the combat factor of the firing units that are within range and firing on that target. For example, in this case, we would have 2, and 1 is 3, 5, and 6. Once the total combat factor has been determined, then you find the ratio between the total combat factor of the attacker and the combat factor of the defender. In this case, it would be 6 to 3, that is 2 to 1. You roll a die which may be modified by the terrain of the X where the target is, and you cross-reference the modified number that you rolled with the appropriate column. In this case it would be this one, and the result may be that the defender retreats, the attacker retreats. That's what the R is for. It may be that the attacker or the defender must take a test of morale. That's what the T is for, so a morale check. A unit that must take a morale check rolls a die, and the morale of the unit is modified by the leader that is stacked with the unit, or a leader that is adjacent to the unit. In this case, for example, this unit would have a morale of 3, because the leader is there. The unit rolls a die. If you roll less than the morale of the unit, nothing happens. If you roll the same as the morale of the unit must retreat. If you roll more, the unit loses a step. And some units have only one step, in which case they die. They are eliminated when they lose a step. Other units will simply be reduced and flipped to the reduced side. And then, of course, you may also simply have a number there, which represents the number of steps that the defender or the attacker loses in that fight. If an attacking cavalry unit during the movement phase moved directly against a target, if it moved through clear terrain and the target also is in clear terrain, then the attacking cavalry unit receives a charge bonus that will be used during the combat phase, and the charge bonus usually is of +2 that is added to the combat factor of the charging unit. An exception is cavalry of the Vikings. That is not nearly as powerful as other types of cavalry, so they only receive a +1 when they're charging, but the procedure to charge is exactly the same. This is the map and the setup for the Battle of Fontenoy, which was part of the Carolingian Civil War. On one side you have the army of Lothar I, and on the other side the army of Charles the Bald. Charles is going to receive some reinforcements here. There's also another unit which is neutral at the beginning of the game. You use this marker here to indicate that, and that unit is just going to sit there and do nothing, just, you know, keep an eye on the battle and see what side is winning by turn 4, and at that point that unit will join the side that is winning. Pretty opportunistic, huh? An important feature on the map is this stream here that can give a defensive bonus. Also, it can prevent enemy cavalry charges, so that can be pretty important. Another important, interesting area is this one with the town of Fontenoy, because that also can grant a defensive bonus, and that is particularly good if that is combined with the stream that flows around it. Map and setup for the Battle of Glon with Frank units against Britain units. The map is pretty neutral, pretty empty, pretty much all clear terrain. Interesting enough, the Britons have some pretty powerful cavalry here that is going to give a hard time to the infantry of the Frank army, especially because being the terrain so clear, it is pretty easy for the cavalry to charge. Also, the Briton cavalry has a special ability, that is that they can retreat easily. So when they're attacked, these cavalry units roll a die, and if they roll a 5 or a 6, they manage to retreat immediately. That is, they just are slippery and they manage to run away before the enemy can attack them. Map and setup for the Battle of Brissard. The situation is that a group of Vikings was returning from a raid against the Frankish lands, and they had several baggage units full of loot when they got ambushed by Frankish units that did not agree with the idea of these guys getting away with all the loot. So the fight is gonna be, well, against these guys that are gonna be almost surrounded. The Vikings are trying to exit their baggage units from here to gain some extra victory points. Things can be tough for them. They have a unit of berserkers that can, well, go berserk. That's their ability. They can charge and get the charge bonus just like cavalry units. On the other hand, the actual Viking cavalry is not that good, so they have only +1 when they charge instead of regular +2. But the Vikings may be able to take advantage of the terrain, for example, to slow down the Frank attack by taking advantage of the river, which is impassable in most parts of the map. This is the only ford that there is. Also, the Viking player, like it happened historically, may take advantage of the church here and the nearby village to use those as defense. Pretty interesting situation overall. And then the last battle is Manfuson and Glon, again Franks versus Vikings, and a lot of Vikings all over the map, but the Franks have some pretty good cavalry units, and because the map is mainly, if not almost entirely, clear terrain, then these units can easily charge, and they can do that much more effectively than the Viking cavalry can do. So that is the balancing factor, power versus higher numbers. This clearly is an introductory war game. It is very simple, could not be simpler, and it will be seen as simplistic by some players, but introductory wargaming is not for everybody. On the other hand, neither advanced wargaming is, so this is just the nature of things. If you see this game for what it is, which is an introductory wargame, then it has all the advantages of this type of games, meaning that the game can be set up easily and fast. The battles play in under an hour, so that's ideal for when you do not have much time. The rules can be taught in just a couple of minutes. The small number of units on the map keeps the pace of the turns fast, and then the game moves fast, which is great. On top of that, here you have basically 4 mini games for the price of one game, because the battles are pretty different from one another. They present different challenges, so I think that's pretty good value for your money. The battles, well, not all of them seem to be balanced. I found that in some of the battles, one of the two sides seems to be strongly favored, which is not always a bad thing. It depends on, how you're using the game, what you're using it for. When, for example, I'm playing a multiplayer game in solitaire mode, I do not mind the lack of balance, because I see it as a puzzle in which I'm trying to figure out a way for the weaker side to win. If you're using this game as an introductory war game, of course, it is perfect. This is really what the game is for. Well, then you simply assign the side that is easier to play to the neophyte, and you will still have a battle that comes out balanced and without having to, let the neophyte win, which sometimes is insulting, is annoying. I never do it. I don't think that should ever be done. Do like this. Take the side that is harder to play, and you will still have a challenge, and you will still be playing a real game, and at the same time the neophyte will see the light and experience the real joy of wargaming for the first time. So, in the end, I think that if you're looking for a light diversion or a game to introduce a friend to the joy of wargaming, this definitely is a good choice.